Yippee-ki-yay, motherfuckers! Welcome to Halcyon Blink. It's time I take a look at the Die Hard series, but actually on this occasion I'm only going to take a look at just the first film. The reason for this is that there are fundamental issues with everyone that follows, and instead I'm going to look at the genesis of the series of the film that I believe to be potentially the manliest Christmas film of all time, if we count Lethal Weapon as a Christmas film. I mean, just to run down why this is a manly Christmas film, and it is a Christmas film. It's got guns, it's got explosions, it's got bibs, it's got gratuitous violence, badass one-liners, and it's one of the best films ever crafted, period. I mean, just to explain that point a little bit more, the film is an outstanding soundtrack. It's wonderfully shot and produced, considering that it was produced mainly in that building in LA, albeit with some sound stages and effects that are done in LA, and its action is realistic, fast-paced. The tension when the film slows down when it needs to is absolutely fantastic, and it's got a ton of badassery when that subtle tension just won't do.
We have left nothing to chance. Get them back! Knock them out! Now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho.
And as I'm sure you're aware, Bruce Willis will never be more closely affiliated or associated with a role than that of John McClane.
Another orphan of a bankrupt culture who thinks he's John Wayne, Rambo, Marshall Dillon.
I was always kind of partial to Roy Rogers, actually. I really like those sequin shirts.
Do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Yippee-ki-yay, mother.
And to be honest, unlike other people that are associated with a one-dimensional role or a character that becomes repetitive and old with time, he can be proud of that fact, because John McClane is a three-dimensional character. He's not just a trope. The fact is, he's a complex three-dimensional character struggling to cope with a failing marriage, bad personal tendencies, and you know, a natural penchant for violence and being a bit of a dick, but he's got a good heart, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to win. And it's perhaps the best attempt to date at portraying a man in an extraordinary situation who must defy odds of insane proportions to overcome a band of terrorists led by the charismatic, if slightly overacted, Hans Gruber, played, even if it was over the top, magnificently and maleficently, that's a big word, isn't it, by the late great Alan Rickman, whose on-screen evil made people suspicious of him, not his character, him as an actor in films even 20 years later. People saw Snape, hadn't read the books, and instantly went, he's definitely a baddie, he's definitely a baddie, he's definitely a baddie. Even when he was doing good shit, and it was proven that he was doing good shit, nah, he probably did it for bad reasons. We are instantly suspicious of him. That's how good his role was in this film and how well he portrayed that snake-like slimy quality.
I wanted this to be professional, efficient, adult, cooperative, not a lot to ask. Alas, your Mr. Takagi did not see it that way, so he won't be joining us for the rest of his life.
And then on top of those two elements, the characters and how well paced and how scored it is, the film is told in segments. It's constantly evolving and escalating, but without becoming completely preposterous. And that grips you from the first quip of John McClane to the last. And when the action does slow down, and it does from time to time, the characterizations and interactions are well written, with perhaps Officer Powell and Dwayne T. Robertson letting the side down in the let's try not to act like a stereotypical Kep category, when they clearly do. Dwayne T. Robinson specifically, there's no real need for him in the film, and everything he says just comes across as disingenuous and pointless and stupid. they cut that from the film and made Powell just a little bit less, well, one-linerish, then the film would improve dramatically considering the screen time that those two were given. And again, just to add more to the trope, it even has the "we're the FBI, we're coming in and we're taking over" trope. It's boring as f***, but yeah, I suppose it was the 80s, they had to have that in their films. They weren't aware of tropes and stereotypes because films hadn't been doing them for that long. If you're one of the few that have never actually sat down to watch Die Hard, you've maybe heard of it through a Friends episode, or you've heard a mate talk about it, or you saw one of the new releases come out, I would highly recommend you check it out, especially over Christmas. However, I would advise you that it is decidedly 80s in how much of an action flick it is, so expect a ton of blood, massive explosions, and gunplay that will blow your speakers off if you've not turned them up for the dialogue. Because you know, back in the 80s they didn't have great sound control. You turn it up to listen to the sound and all of a sudden, and you'd have to quickly fumble for the remote to try and turn it down without waking up your parents who weren't aware that you were watching the film. I was a terrible child. And I would rate this film, if you want to interested in my rating, I'd rate it as an 8 out of 10. As a good general rating, but if you want an action film, this is in the general film, I should say, 8 out of 10 is just like as a film. But in terms of an action film that will engage you and leave you, you know, satiated in your thirst for carnage and mayhem, then this is as good an action film gets without it being called Terminator 2. It really is that good. And it serves as the basis for most action films that came after, albeit these days the choreography and the fight scenes is a lot more gritty and realistic and the explosions are on a much larger scale. But again, it leads into what I said before. This film isn't pretentious or preposterous. It's perfectly reasonable. All of these things could have happened. And that's what makes this film stand out in my mind as being, even with the 80s tropes and even with a few of the slightly 80ish stuff, it stands to this very day. So thank you very much for watching this episode of Halcyon Blink. Please like, share and subscribe. As mentioned before, check out some of the other content creators in the description below. I'd really appreciate if you could do that and give them a like, even a share, or even a subscribe. I was going to say there, weird amalgamation of sharing and subscribing. If you could do that, that'd be even more impressive. Thank you very much for watching again. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you guys in the next Halcyon Blink.